In this video, we're going to take a look at place value through the thousandths. Our goal in this video is to be able to write decimals in standard, word, and expanded form, and also find the value of the underlying digit or possibly even the red digit in each number. Now we're going to build upon what we learned previously as far as standard, word, and expanded form. The only thing we're going to do now is just add a decimal within the numbers. Key tip for today, and something that you really need to write down in your notes, that in word form the decimal is and. Okay, for example, if I'm taking a look at this number of 1 and, whenever I say the decimal there, and 26 hundredths, it's important that the decimal stands for the word and. Okay, and when saying decimals only, say the place value of the last digit. Okay, for example, if I'm taking a look at 1 and 26, this 6 falls in the hundredths place. Okay, so I say 1 and 26 hundredths. Okay, it is important that whenever we're saying decimals and we want to be mathematic technicians here, okay, we don't want to say 1.26. Okay, now that's not the proper way to say it. We want to say 1 and 26 hundredths. So it's important to write these two key tips down. Okay, so these are just a couple different ways that you can actually represent decimals, and even some visuals of what expanded, standard, and word form look like as far as a decimal. Okay, so if we're looking at this particular number right over here, which is 1 and 516 thousandths, okay, we can see coming down here as far as expanded form what it looks like. Okay, we can see that do the same thing as you did with just regular numbers. Okay, you just separate each number, okay, and then just add an addition sign between each digit. Okay, standard form, pretty simple, just how we would normally see it. And then the word form, we have 1 and 516,000. So we can see once again that the and represents the decimal point. Okay, so it's important to realize that the and always represents the decimal point whenever we're working with decimals. Now this is an example of a place value chart. Okay, and we're dealing with the number 1 and 516 thousandths. Okay, now it's important to remember, obviously you know that the 1 is in the ones place. Okay, pretty obvious there. But one thing is really important to remember, that decimals begin in the tenths place, as we can see right here with our number 5. There's not anything called the oneths place. Okay, you always start, decimal place value always starts to the right of the decimal in the tenths place. So you may want to write that down in your notes. Okay, so we go tenths, hundredths, and then thousandths. Okay, and that's all we're going to look at this year in 5th grade, is decimals all the way to the thousandths place. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to take a look at this number, 1 and 926 thousandths. Okay, and I want you to just follow along with me right now, and I'm going to write this number out in expanded form. So we've already broken numbers down in expanded form through the billions place. We're only going to the thousandths in decimals, so these are going to be much smaller and actually a little easier. You just do not need to be intimidated by the decimal point at all. Remember, it's the same exact thing that we did the other day with whole numbers, but we're just including decimals now. Okay, so we want to start all the way to the digit to the left in the ones place, or possibly tens or hundreds place. Okay, whenever we're dealing with whole numbers. Okay, so we're going to start with the number 8. So what we'll do, we'll just write down. So I will now write down the number 8. Okay, so I'm finished with that number. Now I'm going to go to the number 9. Now instead of with whole numbers, we always changed every number to the right to a 0. Whenever we're doing this with decimals, we're going to change every number to the left to 0. So you may want to write that down in your notes. Okay, so we have 8 plus, okay, we have my 9 here, but before we get to my 9, I'm going to change my 8 to a 0. I'm going to include my decimal point, and then I'll write my 9. And I could ignore everything to the right of my 9. Now I'm going to come to my 2. Okay, and that shows me that the value of that 9 is 9/10. Okay, now I'm going to come to my 2. I'm not going to write my 2 down first. I'm going to change that 8 once again to a 0. Put my decimal point there, change my 9 to a 0, and then I'll write my 2. Okay, so part of this problem, we're also trying to find the value of the red digit, so we can see that we've changed every number to a 0 to the left of this number 2. Okay, so this is actually worth 200ths. Okay, then finally we come to our 6. We change the 8 to a 0. We change the 9 to a 0. We change the 2 to a 0. And then we finally write the number 6. So that shows us that that 6, the actual value of that 6 is 6 thousandths. Okay, so this is how you take 8 and 926 thousandths and put it into expanded form. You can see the thing that we need to remember, instead of changing all the numbers to the right of the digit like we did with whole numbers, with mixed numbers and decimals, what we can do now is we can change all the digits to the left of the number we're putting to zeros. So we're going to take a look at another one now. Now we're going to take a look at our next number, 5 and 1400ths. Okay, we're going to put this in expanded form. First step, we're going to write the 5 down. Okay, pretty simple. We don't need to put zeros or anything else behind the 5. Now we're going to come to the number in the tenths place. Okay, so 1 is the digit, but the way we do these, remember, every digit's to the left of the number we turn into a 0. So we're going to turn that 5 into a 0. Make sure you don't forget your decimal point. And then we write 1. So we can see that the value of that red digit, when all the other digits are taken out of the equation here, or out of the number, we can see the value of that red digit is 1/10. And then we go to our 4. We'll change our 5 to a 0, put our decimal point, change our 1 to a 0, and finally write our 4. So we can see now that the value of that 4 is 400ths. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do a couple together. So I want you to get out your math journal and your pencil, and we'll do the next one together. Okay, so we have this number now, and if you would like, you can start with that 0. You don't necessarily have to. Okay, but if it's going to make you feel better, that's completely fine. So if you just want to go with the rule of and try to include every single digit, that's fine. If you want to start with the 3 and the tenths place, that's completely fine as well. Okay, so if we wanted to start with 0, we would just write the 0 down and then add it, okay, to the next digit. That's completely fine. So we would add 0 plus 0 and 3/10. Okay, so we can see that that number in the tenths place, that number 3 in the tenths place is actually 3/10. Okay, plus we're going to go to our 6 now, 0, put our decimal point, change that 3 to a 0, include that 6. And then finally we're coming to that red digit. Okay, we can write 0 for the whole number, change that 3 to a 0, change that 6 to a 0, and write 3. So now we can also see that that value of the red digit is actually 3 thousandths. Okay, now we're actually going to skip a couple now. We're going to go to number 5. We're going to do that together, and I'm going to have you do 4 and 6 all by yourself. Okay, so let's take a look at number 5. I wanted to show you what to do whenever you come to zeros. Oops, made a little mistake there. Whenever you come to zeros there in your decimal place value. Okay, so we'll start with the number 2, just like we would normally. We're just going to write 2 here as our whole number, and then we're going to add this to the next digit of any value. Alright, so we're going to change that 2 to a 0. The next 2 digits don't have any value, but we do still need to include them. Okay, and then we're just going to write our 7 down. Okay, so we skipped over the tenths and the hundredths place, okay, because there was not any digit with any value. We went all the way to the thousandths place for the number 7. Okay, so this is a pretty simple problem here. We just have 2 plus 7 thousandths as far as expanded form, and we can see the value of that red digit is actually 7 thousandths. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want to have you complete numbers 4 and 6. Okay, and if you need to rewind the video and watch a little bit more of how we did it, that's fine. Okay, but if you feel comfortable moving on, you can work on numbers 4 and 6. And when you're finished completing these problems, you can press play and you'll have the answers for you. So what I want you to do is pause the video now. Okay, now here are your 2 answers. For number 4, we can see 1 plus 2/10 plus 7/100 plus 5/1000. We can see the value of that red digit here is 7/100. Okay, and then finally for number 6, we have 9 plus 8/10 plus 5/100, so we can see the value of that red digit is 8/10. Okay, so now we're going to move on to writing decimals in word form. If you need to rewind this a little bit and watch more on expanded form, feel free to do that. Okay, so whenever we're writing these numbers in word form, what we need to do is just kind of break it down just step by step. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is just look at your whole numbers. Okay, so I just have a whole number of 8, so that's pretty simple. I'm going to write that whole number 8, just like this. Okay, now what I do next is I need to include the decimal. Whenever I'm including the decimal point in word form, that represents the word and. Okay, now before I do anything else, I'm just going to take a look at that number and think of it as a whole number. I'm not going to worry about the decimal right now. Okay, so that's pretty simple, 926. I think all of you would be able to figure that out. Okay, I'm going to write 900. $26. Now what I need to do is take a look at whatever place value that final digit falls into with the decimal. I need to include that as kind of like the last name of my decimal here. So 8 and 926. I know this is the tenths place, hundredths place, this is a thousandths place, so that's going to be the last name of my number here, 926 thousandths. Okay, so what I want you to do now is get out your math journal and pencil. We're going to do the next couple together. Okay, so we have the number 5 and 14/100ths. So what we're going to do first of all, we're just going to take a look at that whole number, which is 5. We'll write 5 down. We come to the decimal point, and remember in word form the decimal point is the word and. Now the next thing we need to do is just look at the number in the decimal point, or decimal place value. I know that's the number 14, which is pretty simple. Now the tricky part is trying to give it a last name. Okay, 514, when you look and see what place value that final digit, which is right here, the number 4, what place value that falls into, I know that the 1 is in the tenths place, the 4 is in the hundredths place, so 5 and 14/100ths. So now we're going to take a look at the number 5. We're going to write this one in word form as well. You start out with the number, the whole number, which is 2. Pretty simple. We'll just write that down. We come to our decimal point. We write the word and for the decimal point. Now since the tenths and hundredths do not have any value at all, we skip right over that. Okay, we don't say 0/10ths or anything like that. Okay, we go all the way down to the next digit with value, and we look at even the number in the decimal place value, and that's actually just the number 7. Okay, so 2 and 7, and then we need to figure out what place value that 7 falls into to give this number a last name. Okay, tenths, hundredths, and the 7 is in the thousandths. Okay, so 2 and 7 thousandths. Okay, so what I want you to do now is numbers 4 and 6 all by yourself. Change these numbers from standard form to word form. And when you're finished doing this, you can press play and you'll see the answer. So I want you to pause the video now. Okay, so here are the two answers, 1 and 275 thousandths. The 5 fell in the thousandths place, so that's why we gave it the last name. And also 9 and 85 hundredths. The 5 fell in the hundredths place, so that's why we gave that last name. Okay, so please let me know if you have any questions about either of these concepts we went over in this video.